Me too. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Mr. Kessler Reads. Tonight, we're going to finish up Chapter 5 of The Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman. Last night, we read about the Dance Macabre. All the ghosts were very mysterious in what they were preparing for, and they would not tell Bod about it. So he was feeling lonely, and he took off. And as he walked through the town center, he got a flower, and then all the ghosts started coming out of the graveyard, and everybody was just like cool with it. So let's see how this goes. All right. Hosea Worthington walked up the steps until he reached Miss Carraway, the lady mayoress. He extended his arms and said loud enough that the whole square could hear him, "Gracious lady, this I pray, join me in the macabre." Miss Carraway hesitated. She glanced up at the man beside her for guidance. He wore a robe and pajamas and slippers, and he had a white flower pinned to the lapel of his robe. He smiled and nodded to Miss Carraway. "Of course," Miss Carraway said. She reached out a hand. As her fingers touched Hosea Worthington's, the music began once more. The music Bod had heard until then was a prelude. It was a prelude no longer. This was the music they had all come to hear, a melody that plucked at their feet and fingers. They took hands, the living with the dead, and they began to dance. Bod saw Mother Slaughter dancing with a man in a turban, while the businessman was dancing with Louisa Bartleby. Mistress Owens smiled at Bod as she took the hand of the old newspaper seller, and Mr. Owens reached out and took the hand of a small girl without condescension, and she took his hand as if she had been waiting to dance with him her whole life. Then Bod stopped looking because someone's hand closed around his. The dance began. Liza Hempstock grinned at him. "This is fine," she said as they began to tread the steps of the dance together. Then she sang to the tune of the dance. "Step and turn and walk and stay. Now we dance the macabre." The music filled Bod's head and chest with fierce joy. His feet moved as if they knew the steps already, had known them forever. He danced with Liza Hempstock, and then, when the measure ended, he found his hand taken by Fortinbras Bartleby, and he danced with Fortinbras, stepping past lines of dancers, lines that parted as they came through. Bod saw Ebenezer Bolger dancing with Miss Barrows, his old former teacher. He saw the living dancing with the dead, and the one-on-one dances became long lines of people stepping together in unison, walking and kicking, la la la, la la la, a line dance that had been ancient 1,000 years before. Now he was in line beside Liza Hempstock. He said, "Where does the music come from?" She shrugged. "Who's making all this happen?" "It always happens," she told him. "The living may not remember, but we always do." She broke off, excited. "Look." Bod had never seen a real horse before, only in the pages of picture books. But the white horse that clomped down the street towards them was nothing like the horses he had imagined. It was bigger by far, with a long, serious face. There was a woman riding on the horse's bare back, wearing a long gray dress that hung and gleamed beneath the December moon like cobwebs in the dew. She reached the square and the horse stopped, and the woman in gray slipped off it easily and stood on the earth, facing them all, the living and the dead of them. She curtsied, and as one they bowed or curtsied in return, and the dance began anew. "Now, the lady on the gray leads us in the macabre," sang Liza Hempstock. Before the whirl of the dance took her off and away from Bod, they stomped to the music and stepped and spun and kicked, and the lady danced with them, stepping and spinning and kicking with enthusiasm. Even the white horse swayed its head and stepped and shifted to the music. The dance sped up, the dancers with it. Bod was breathless. He could not imagine the dance ever stopping. The macabre, the dance of the living and the dead, the dance with death. Bod was smiling, and everyone was smiling. He caught sight of the lady in the gray dress from time to time. as he spun and stomped his way across the municipal gardens. Everyone thought Bod. Everyone is dancing. He thought it, and as soon as he thought it, he realized that he was mistaken. In the shadows by the old town hall, a man was standing, dressed all in black. He was not dancing. He was watching them. Bod wondered if it was longing that he saw on Silas's face, or sorrow, or something else. But his guardian's face was unreadable. He called out, "Silas!" hoping to make the guardian come to them, to join the dance, to have the fun they were having. But when he heard his name, Silas stepped back into the shadows and was lost to sight. "Last dance," someone called, and the music swirled up into something stately and slow and final. Each of the dancers took a partner, the living with the dead, each to each. Bod reached out his hand and found himself touching fingers with and gazing into the gray eyes of the lady in the cobweb dress. She smiled at him. "Hello, Bod," she said. "Hello," he said, as he danced with her. "I don't know your name." "Names aren't really important," she said. "I love your horse. He's so big. I never knew horses could be that big. He is gentle enough to bear the mightiest of you away on his broad back, and strong enough for the smallest of you as well." "Can I ride him?" asked Bod. "One day," she told him, and her cobweb skirts shimmered. "One day, everybody does. Promise?" "I promise." And with that, the dance was done. Bod bowed low to his dancing partner, and then, and only then, did he feel exhausted, feel as if he had been out dancing for hour after hour. He could feel all his muscles aching and protesting. He was out of breath. A clock somewhere began to strike the hour, and Bod counted along with it. 12 chimes. He wondered if they had been dancing for 12 hours or 24, or for no time at all. He straightened up and looked around him. The dead had gone, and the lady on the gray. Only the living remained, and they were beginning to make their way home, leaving the town square sleepily, stiffly, like people who had awakened from a deep sleep, walking without truly waking. The town square was covered with tiny white flowers. It looked as if there had been a wedding. Bod woke the next afternoon in the Owens' tomb, feeling like he knew a huge secret, that he had done something important, and was burning to talk about it. When Mr. Owens got up, Bod said, "That was amazing last night." Mr. Owens said, "Oh, yes. We danced," said Bod, "all of us, down in the old town." "Did we indeed?" said Mr. Owens, with a snort. "Dancing, is it? And you know you aren't allowed down into town." Bod knew better than to even try to talk to his mother when she was in this kind of mood. He slipped out of the tomb and into the gathering dusk. He walked up the hill to the black obelisk in Hosea Worthington's stone, where there was a natural amphitheater. He could look out at the old town and at the lights of the city around it. Hosea Worthington was standing beside him. Bod said, "You began the dance with the mayor. You danced with her." Hosea Worthington looked at him and said nothing. "You did," said Bod. Hosea Worthington said, "The dead and the living do not mingle, boy. We are no longer part of their world, and they are no part of ours. If it happened that we danced the dance macabre with them, the dance of death, then we would not speak of it, and we certainly would not speak of it to the living. But I'm one of you. Not yet, boy. Not for a lifetime." And Bod realized why he had danced as one of the living, and not as one of the crew that had walked down the hill, and he said only, "I see, I think." He went down the hill at a run, a 10-year-old boy in a hurry, going so fast he almost tripped over Digby Pool, 1785 to 1816. As I am, so shall you be." Righting himself by effort of will, and charged down to the old chapel, scared he would miss Silas. His guardian would already be gone by the time Bod got there. Bod sat down on the bench. There was a movement beside him, although he heard nothing move, and his guardian said, "Good evening, Bod." "You were there last night," said Bod. "Don't try and say you weren't there or something, because I know you were." "Yes," said Silas. "I danced with her, with the lady on the white horse." "Did you? You saw it? You watched us, the living and the dead?" "We were dancing. Why won't anyone talk about it?" "Because there are mysteries. Because there are things that people are forbidden to speak about. Because there are things they do not remember. But you're speaking about it right now. We're talking about the macabre. I have not danced it, said Silas. You saw it, though. Silas said only, I don't know what I saw. I danced with the lady, Silas, explained Bod. His guardian looked almost heartbroken then, and Bod found himself scared, like a child who has woken a sleeping panther. But all Silas said was, this conversation is at an end. Bod might have said something. There were 100 things he wanted to say, unwise though it might have been to say them, when something distracted his attention, a rustling noise, soft and gentle, a cold feathered touch. Something brushed his face. All thoughts of dancing were forgotten then. His fear was replaced with delight and with awe. It was the third time in his life that he had seen it. Look, Silas, it's snowing, he said, joy filling his chest and head, leaving no room for anything else. It's really snow. Interlude. Convocation. A small sign in the hotel lobby announced that the Washington room was taken that night by a private function, although there was no information as to what kind of function this might be. Truthfully, if you were to look at the inhabitants of the Washington room that night, you would have no clear idea of what was happening, although a rapid glance would tell you that there were no women in there. They were all men, that much was clear, and they sat at round dinner tables, and they were finishing their dessert. There were about 100 of them, all in sober black suits, but the suits were all they had in common. They had white hair or dark hair, or fair hair or red hair, or no hair at all. They had friendly faces or unfriendly, helpful or sullen, open or secretive, brutish or sensitive. The majority of them were pink-skinned, but there were black-skinned men and brown-skinned. They were European, African, Indian, Chinese, South American, Filipino, American. They all spoke English when they talked to each other or to the waiters, but their accents were as diverse as gentlemen. They came from all across Europe, from all over the world. Men in black suits sat around their tables while up on platform one of their number, a wide, cheery man dressed in a morning suit, as if he had just come from a wedding, was announcing good deeds done. Children from poor places had been taken on exotic holidays. A bus had been brought to take people who needed it on excursions. The man Jack sat at the front center table beside the dapper man with silver white hair. They were waiting for coffee. Time's a ticking, said the silver haired man, and we're none of us getting any younger. The man Jack said, I've been thinking that business in San Francisco 4 years ago was unfortunate, but like the flowers that bloom in the spring, tra la, absolutely nothing to do with the case. You failed, Jack. You weren't meant to take care of them all. That included the baby. You were meant to take care of them all. That included the baby. Especially the baby. Nearly only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. A waiter in a white jacket poured coffee for each of the men at the table. A small man with a pencil-thin mustache, a tall blond man, good-looking enough to be a film star or a model, and a dark-skinned man with a huge head who glared out at the world like an angry bull. These men were making a point of not listening to Jack's conversation, and instead were paying attention to the speaker, even clapping from time to time. Silver-haired man added several heaped spoonfuls of sugar to his coffee, stirred it briskly. 10 years, he said. Time and tide wait for no man. The babe will soon be grown. And then what? Still have time, Mr. Dandy, the man Jack began. Silver man, haired man cut him off, stabbing a large pink finger in his direction. You had time. Now you just have a deadline. Now you've got to get smart. We can't cut you any slack. Not anymore. Sick of waiting we are. Every man jack of us. Man Jack nodded. Curtly, I have leads to follow, he said. Silver-haired man slurped his black coffee. Really? Really, and I repeat, I think it's connected with the trouble we had in San Francisco. You've discussed this with the secretary, Mr. Dandy indicated the man at the podium, who was at that moment telling them about a hospital equipment bought in the previous year from their generosity. Not one, not two, but 3 kidney machines, he was saying. The men in the room applauded themselves and their generosity politely. The man Jack nodded. I've mentioned it. And he's not interested. He just wants results. He wants me to finish the business I started. We all do, Sunshine, said the silver-haired man. The boy's still alive, and time is no longer our friend. The other men at the table, who had pretended not to be listening, grunted and nodded their agreement. Like I say, Mr. Dandy said without emotion, time's a ticking. That is the end of chapter 5 and the interlude. Tomorrow we will begin chapter 6. That's called Nobody Owens School Days. There are 3 chapters remaining, so hopefully we will finish before school ends. As for now, take care of yourselves and your families and keep reading. Thank you.